الله الرحمن الرحيم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. I welcome you to another episode of our series Safara Al Keram, where we strive to be in the company of the blessed and holy angels by perfecting our recitation of the Quran. The recitation of the Quran is one of the primary ways to increase our own iman. As one beautiful parable tells us, the heart is afflicted with rust, and one of the ways to remove this rust is by reciting the Quran. That is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes the believers as those who recite the Quran. He mentions the characteristics of the believers, and he starts off this description by saying, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يَتْلُونَ كِتَابَ اللَّهِ. Those who recite the book of Allah, and they pray, and they fast, and they do good deeds, they are the ones, يَرْجُونَ تِجَارَةً لَن تَبُورَ. They are going to have a very beautiful, a very beneficial, a very lucrative transaction, meaning that they will gain Jannah. So to recite and to memorize the Quran is an integral part of our iman. As the famous companion Ibn Mas'ud said, that he who does not have anything of the Quran in his heart, in his chest, he is like a broken house. He is like a ruined house. Meaning that if you wish to build your house, you want to make a strong house of your heart, recite the Quran and memorize the Quran. If you don't have anything of the Quran, Ibn Mas'ud described you then like a ruined or a house in shambles. And that is why the Quran describes itself as being enclosed in the hearts or in the chests of those who have knowledge. As Allah says, بَلْ هُوَ آيَاتٌ بَيِّنَاتٌ فِي صُدُورِ الَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْعِلْمِ. The Quran is composed of clear verses, which is encompassed, enclosed in the chests of those who have knowledge. So if you wish to have knowledge, you wish to have iman, you must recite, you must memorize, you must ponder over, and you must implement the Quran. There is no other way besides this. In our previous episode, we were discussing the rules of the mad, or the elongation of the vowels. And today we're going to move on to part 2 of these rules, and we will discuss what happens when a hamza occurs after a mad. Remember, we defined the natural mad to be something in which there is no hamza before or after, and no sukoon before or after. Now we're going to talk about what if there is. A hamza before the mad, we discussed it already. We call that what type of mad? Substitution. Okay. Now we discuss what occurs if a hamza exists after the letter of mad. Now, logically this can occur in one of two ways. The hamza can either be in the same word, or it can be at the beginning of a different word. Which means that the mad occurs at the end of one word, and the hamza occurs in the beginning of the second. So let's take each of these two rulings one by one. If the hamza occurs in the same word as the mad, we call it the connected mad, al-mad al-muttasil. Obviously, why do we call it connected? Because it is connected, because it's in the same word. So common sense, you call it al-mad al-muttasil, the mad which is connected. This mad, you have to lengthen a very long way. So you have 4 or 5. Scholars have given you the choice. You can do it 4 to 4 harakas. What is a haraka once again? It is the time that it takes to open a finger from a closed fist. Okay, so this is 1 haraka, 2 harakas, 3 harakas, 4 harakas. So the scholars say you have a choice of 4 or 5 harakas. Basically make it very long. So you must make this mad very long. Some examples. طائفة. Notice we have the alif followed by a hamza, okay, in the same word. So then you have to make it long. طائفة. You cannot just say طائفة, which is a natural mad, 2 harakas. That would be a mistake. Likewise over here, خطيئة. You have 4 or 5. You have to make it long. سوءة. You have a waw preceded by a dhamma, followed by a hamza. You have to make it once again long. As-samaa. Once again you have an alif preceded by a fatha, followed by a hamza. Again, it's just simple common sense. You look at the word, you examine what is before and after it, and you apply the rule. It's not that difficult. All it requires is you know the rule. So the rule is what? If the hamza occurs in the same word after the letter of mad, then you have to prolong it to 4 or 5. Likewise, si'at. You have a ya preceded by a kasra, followed by a hamza. Once again, you make it long. Likewise, malaika. Okay, again, it's a common mistake. Al-malaika. No, this is a natural mad. You have to prolong it. Al-malaika. You have to make it long. If you don't make it long, then it is a mistake. So if it's the same word, you call it al-mad al-muttasil, or the connected mad. The ruling, you make it long, 4 or 5, meaning you have to make it very long. What's the other situation or scenario? If the hamza occurs at the beginning of a different word. This time, again, it doesn't take too much of knowledge to understand. It's called a separated mad. In contrast to a connected mad, in Arabic we say al-mad al-munfasil. Why is it separated? Because it's in 2 separate words. Again, it's common sense. In this case, we have an option. We have a broader choice. We can lengthen it to 2 or 4 or 5 harakas. It's completely up to us. So you can't go wrong whatever you do, as long as you do a mad. Okay, whatever you do is going to be correct. There's only one point, and that is that, suppose you open up the Quran to recite. The first time you come across a separated mad, you need to make a choice. Do I want to recite al-mad al-munfasil as 2 or as 4 or as 5? Once you've made that choice, then until you finish that recitation, you should be consistent. You should be consistent in your choice. If you've chosen to recite it as 2 harakas, every time you come to a mad al-munfasil, a separated mad, make sure it's 2 harakas. Likewise, if you've chosen to be 4, make it 4, and with 5, make it 5. If you mix and match, it will not be correct tajweed. You should be consistent, but obviously not for the rest of your life, only for that particular recitation. When you sit down, you open the Quran. When you close it, then the next time you come, you can choose another length to do it. Let us look at some examples. Fi anfusikum. Okay, let us now do fi anfusikum as 2 harakas. Amr, why don't you try it as 2 harakas?
Fi anfusikum.
Very good. Okay, why don't you try it as 4 harakas? Qu anfusakum.
Qu anfusakum.
Very good.